Howdy folks, Rudrose here, and are you ready to destroy your opponent's inkwells and make all those red-blue players cry? Well, I know I certainly am. Today's deck will be Emerald Sapphire, looking at the Ink Geyser as one of our primary cards to wreak some havoc. And man, testing this out, this deck has been a ton of fun. I may consider this running as my primary deck. I'm not saying this is an optimized version of it, but this is a version I've had a lot of fun with, really leaning into a lot of the shift lines and taking advantage of some of these new green-blue cards. So of all the green-blue cards we have, Hero Hamada, Yokai, the Baymax, and the Ink Geyser. The only one I haven't really tested is the Yokai. In theory, he would be great in a shift deck, right? But I don't know, he fits in a weird spot. On turn 2, you generally want to be ramping, but he is nice to get the shift. His stats are so weak too. Nonetheless, let me show you what we do have here. So I have a version I'm going to show you before I show you all the matches, and then I have a version I would maybe make some edits and some cuts. So here's the original version, and what I really love about this list is it feels very multi-dimensional. It does not feel like you have to have this static, okay, turn 1 do this, then turn 2 you ramp, then turn 2, turn 3 you do this. Yeah, you can follow that path, but a lot of times it gives you a lot of lines. So we have our Diablo shift line in here. This is still a very good shift line to go in on turn 2. Plus, if you ramp with a Tipo, Diablo is going to give you that card right back. Maybe you set up Clarabelle and then Morph, and then you're threatening a shift of either the Baymax, which you can do on turn 3 if you've ramped with Tipo, or Clarabelle. I will say one thing about this list. It is not running the item package. We don't have Flaversham, so our card draw is heavily dependent on either Diablo or Clarabelle, so I would try to dig for one of these in your opening. Some cards that you'll see cut from the final list. Basil was originally in here as a shift target, and the idea being that, well, once you use Ink Geyser and you blow their hand back, to their hand, then you can just pay 1 to make them start discarding. The problem was, in practice, they had so many cards in their hand, that just didn't really work out that way, so I do end up cutting him in the final version. But he was at least worth trying. The funny thing about Scrooge and Baymax is they're the same card, right? Scrooge is 2 cheaper. Scrooge also doesn't require a shift target. But the downside being that Scrooge, when he comes in on the turn you play him, he obviously can't challenge or quest right away, whereas Baymax can if you shift him on top of Tipo, which is pretty cool. I'm not a big fan of the small hero especially. I wish he said, like, anytime you shift a Floodborn character, you get to draw a card, which is kind of what Baymax's Charging Station does, but I just think that card is a little too slow, especially because you can't get out till turn 3. But I am a big fan of this hero, that anytime you essentially have a shifted character on the board, it gains Evasive and Ward, works for himself. He also quests for 3. It gives you Clarabelle and Baymax Ward. It's fun, and I really like it. I don't know how consistent it is, though, because I have had other games as well where I don't get him till turn 7. I just have to play him naturally, and then he doesn't do anything. So while I like this card, this is another one that potentially you can see cut, and I'll show you the final list over here. Sales, of course, a staple at this point. Vision is a really good way to help you dig for what you need. Ink Geyser, I'll get to that one in just a second. We also just need some forms of straight removal, so Let It Go and Bruno being primary forms of them. Bruno is going to be difficult to make them discard the card you want to, especially if you've blown up their Inkwell with Geyser and now their hand's really big, but at least it's just spot removal. It gets something off the board, gets rid of that Tamatoa or that Maui Shark or something. Same with Let It Go. Fishbone Quill is insanely important with the Ink Geyser because it really allows us to cheat around the ink we're doing. And McDuck Manor is just a great location and a way to help you push towards that lore condition, especially since we don't have a ton of characters in this deck. Over half the deck still, of course, but not a ton. So one of the big combinations with Ink Geyser that you can do on your turn, and you'll get to see this in some of the matches, if you've, let's say, sailed that turn, you haven't inked yet, and you have a quill. So you use up whatever ink you have, get down to 3, hit the Ink Geyser, you blow everything back to everyone's hands. Now you can still ink twice for the turn due to sail and your natural ink, and do quill. Suddenly you've got 3 ink you can still use for the turn. You're all the way back up to 6, and it's so strong with Clarabelle because now you've added so many cards to their hand. You just draw so many cards, and you're going to see it in some of these matches that even with a handful of 6, 7, 8 cards in hand, I'm still drawing cards from my opponent because the Ink Geyser has just blown them away. It's still quite early in the game to say what is and isn't good, but I think this card and this color pairing has a real shot to threaten all the red-blue, the Ruby Sapphire that everyone's anticipating seeing, because they still need their ink to function. And multiple times playing against that, or even a red-purple deck, and it's turn 6, and you know next turn they're going to try to beat prep you, and you just go, nope, I don't think so. All the way back to your hand, start over from scratch. I can see this being incredibly frustrating to play against. Now, as always, Baja Blast or Green Sapphire or Emerald Sapphire, Green Blue, whatever you want to call it, has some similar weaknesses. It does really struggle aggro. I'm going to show you an aggro matchup, and it's very difficult to deal with that. There are some other cards you could put in. Maybe you put in a couple more Scrooge to deal with that. But yeah, it has struggled with those matchups, and that's probably the biggest weakness of this deck, is that sometimes it just crumbles, and there are matches when if I don't see the card draw of the Clarabelle, of the Diablo, it can really struggle. You'll notice we are also not playing the Bend to My Will version of this. Yes, that is another version you can absolutely do, where you Ink Geyser, put as many cards back into their hand as possible, you ramp right back to 7 as quick as you can, and then you just discard their entire hand. I think that's very viable. It's a little combo-y, and I have had a lot of fun with the deck in spite of that, but maybe that is the way to go, is that you go for the Bend to My Will, and you go just for the super ultra feels bad, make your opponent hate themselves version. But this version has been fun. Let me show you some matches for it. We are using Ink Table for our demonstrative purposes, which, as a reminder, the AI is not amazing, so, always kind of take these with a grain of salt. Now, this isn't an amazing opening hand. I've got a lot of ramp, but I don't have any card draw. I don't have the Diablo or the Clarabelle, but I at least have a lot of fun Ink Geyser shenanigans, which I decide is probably worth going on to. I could have gotten the Morph out to potentially shift, but I decide, nope, I'm just going to wait. And I go ahead and put out the Quill. And I just start ramping that way. And potentially I'm going to just try to hard cast the Clarabelle, which I can do this turn. And you can see, even though I had to hard cast her because I was able to dump my hand out, I just refilled, 4 or 5 cards in hand. And now we are ready to blow our opponent's ink apart with the Ink Geyser. So I'll probably do this very carefully. So first I put out McDuck Manor. Then I Ink Geyser. Now I can use the Quill. Now I can cast Sail. So now I can ink again. So put out as much as possible. Go to pass turn. Clarabelle still draws us, another 3 cards, and I'm already back up to 6. Now, my opponent's also playing ramp, so they have the ability to get back up there as well. But, we can always Ink Geyser him again if we want to. So, first I put out the hero, then I Ink Geyser again. Ink for turn, ink that. I'm a little off of getting that second Quill out, but I'm just going to keep getting the Clarabelle. So, I've already got the mana out, Clarabelle, and again, Clarabelle just drew me, another 4 or 5 cards there? And our opponent is, what are they going to do on 3 ink? I don't care if you're Ruby Sapphire. That deck can't do anything on 3 ink. So we're going to Sail. We're going to Quill. And you're going to see just how quickly I can ramp my ink, which also means I'm emptying my hand. And it doesn't matter. I'm going against one of the decks with the best removal in the game. They're stuck on 4 ink right now. They have to continually do that. There you see a shift, so we can draw another card. Quest out with the Baymax. Pass, draw another, 4 or 5 cards there from our opponent. Look at these hands. Holy moly, look at these hands. Our opponent does use Maui to finally get rid of the Clarabelle. I think it's a little too late at this point. So we have a lot of fun options. I put out another Quill. And another Manor. And they're still on 5 ink. So, what could they... They're not going to be able to B-prep this board. I go ahead and shift the Basil. Here, I use them a little bit. Yeah, at this point, I'm basically just playing with my food. And that was with a bad start, right? A bad start in the sense that I didn't have a shift line of Diablo Clarabelle, but I had enough ramp. I just rocketed to 7, jammed the Clarabelle out, and Bob's your uncle. I think Ink Geyser is really going to let you prey on these ramp decks, but let's see how it does against an aggressive deck. So this time we're going to be going against the Diggy Diggy Hole deck, the Amber Steel aggro, which means Hero is going to be far too slow. Get to check their hand there briefly. I've got the Diablo shift line at least. And Daisy's going to help put a couple extra cards in her hand. So now I can both shift the Diablo and ramp. I can either ramp with Sail or Tipo, and I think which one you prefer to do just kind of depends on your match. I opt to go for the Sail, just realizing, what's Tipo going to do it against Daisy? Put 1 on a 4 cost of something with 4 willpower? Not so much. I actually just go ahead and use Diablo to challenge the mine, realizing I got to do what I can. Our opponent has the Storm Rage on to counter. They did have to hard cast it at least, but they get rid of our Diablo. And here is where Scrooge is very nice. Scrooge is probably one of your best tools against early aggression, and so it might be worth it to get a full 4 of him if that's something you feel like you're going to run into a lot, and get rid of cards like this hero is okay, but he's not doing a ton for me right now. Instead of putting out the morph, I opt to ramp a little more with the sail. I can shift the hero next turn, which will be nice. Our opponent actually just says, hey, I'm going to take out your Scrooge. And that way he can't counter into my Smee or take out the manor. I do shift the hero. As much as I'd love to quest for 3, I think I'm probably going to have to use it to challenge either Cinderella or the Mine. You could argue Cinderella's the correct choice just in case they have a song. Luckily they didn't there. Clarabelle is also very weak in this matchup as well. I honestly just shift her out just to get a body, and this way I'll at least get to draw a single card. But usually these aggro decks tend to not have a lot of cards in hand, so Clarabelle is not going to get you a whole lot of lore. As you can see, they're already up to 13 lore. Luckily at this point, I know they don't have any kind of big wide board control, so I can just go wide and start trying to catch up lore-wise. Now, this is an instance of the computer, I think, making a mistake. It attacks with the Lawrence. Yeah, it gets a single heal off the Rapunzel, but I don't think that was worth it. I think they needed to just keep questing. But regardless, we get into a form of removal, as you can see here, so I can just knock the Rapunzel out. And I'm going to have the Clarabelle take out the Lawrence. And now everyone can just quest, and I can really try to catch up here. And Clarabelle still draws us cards. Even though they don't have a ton of cards in hand, they have just enough. And Diablo is going to help refill that hand too. So this matchup is difficult. It's not impossible. You definitely want to get those bodies out, and you need to see some of this spot removal too. So that when they play these readied characters, you don't have a way to challenge readied characters. So you need to see these spot removal songs. And now we quest out, and finally we've got a big enough board. And at this point, I just dump everything in my Inkwell, so I'll get a single draw off a Clarabelle. And we can always shift the Baymax for extra lore gain. I might even show this, yeah, just to show. Shift Baymax onto something. Actually, experiment there. It instantly got banished because the Clarabelle had too much damage on her. All right, this time we're going against red-purple. And we get essentially a ramping turn. You can put out Clarabelle or Diablo. I'm probably going to choose Diablo just in case I'm lucky enough to draw into the shift Diablo, which I was not. Unfortunately, I drew another uninkable. But at least I can get one of those Baymax down there. This will be against Ruby Amethyst, a deck I do hope is still very good this set. So no shift line for Clarabelle currently. I can ramp with the Sail. I can ramp with the Fishbone. I can shift with the Baymax, which is what I opt to do. And just have a big, it's very difficult to deal with a 5/5 that early in the game, which was the same way with Scrooge. So I'm in a bit of a weird spot here because, again, this is showing you that without the Clarabelle, without the Diablo, you are lacking for card draw. Now, the good news is our opponent is getting so much card draw that if I can get to the Clarabelle, I can do it. And the reason I put out the Quill there is because it guarantees I can get to Clarabelle next turn. Even if I draw an uninkable, Quill can put it right into the Inkwell, and then Clarabelle is going to top me off. They do finally get rid of Baymax, but look at this, empty hand. Oh, your hand is huge? Yeah, I'll just draw a starting hand of, what was that, 7, 8 cards? Don't mind if I do. Oh, you're on turn 6? You're in that Be Prepared range? So check this out. We start with the Sail. We get the extra inking action. We'll go ahead and scout. Oh, they got that Be Prepared in hand. That's a shame they're never going to get to use it, which means I can now safely go wide. That was an issue with this deck beforehand, right? It could never safely go wide. Well, now it can because you're going to be nowhere near that Be Prepared, and you have no way to ramp. So we ink for turn. We can ink again for the Sail. I can have the Quill put something else in. I put out another Quill. I put out something else. Look how much. I'm all the way back up to 7 ink. I'm right back where I started. Holy moly. Yeah, the Maui can take out the Clarabelle, but look, I just redrew how many cards into my hand? And in theory, I kind of just want to get to that next Ink Geyser. Computer opts not to. Goes for even more card draw. I say, oh, even more card draw? Don't mind if I do. Happy to shift Diablos here. As not only is it just a good thing to do because it's a shifted Diablo, it means I have even less cards in my hand, which means I'm going to reset. I go ahead and help him out a little bit. Go ahead and put a Maui back into the Inkwell, which means my Clarabelle is safe. Immediately shift the hero, which means now my Diablo has ward, and well, it already had evasive, and we pass him. We just, another casual 8 card draw, and there's the Ink Geyser. Oh, poor Ruby Amethyst thought, okay, it's fine. I'll just B-prep him next turn. Are you? Are you really going to B-prep me? Yeah, I don't think you are. Let's put out a McDuck Manor. We'll cast the Sail. Now we have extra ink. Trying to see if there's any 1-drop worth putting out or if I just blow up the Inkwell. Now at this point, yep, I put out the Clarabelle. Ink Geyser. all the way back to 3. Look at this hand. Holy moly. And we'll ink again for the sale, and we'll go ahead and put something back with the quill. Oh, what's that? Yeah, we're all the way back. We're all the way back to 7 ink. Put out another McDuck Manor, and we'll just quest. So go ahead. Why don't you stop my... Hold on. Let's stop this. Go ahead. You need to answer Clarabelle for 2 lore, Diablo for 1 lore, Hero for 3 lore. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here. Oh, and then 2 manors, 11. 11 lore, and you are on 3 ink. 3 ink. Like, and look at how many cards I have in hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Good gravy. When this deck pops off, folks, holy moly, does it absolutely pop off. I have had an absolute Baja blast with this deck. So here was the version I originally showed you. This is the version I'm going to put a link to in the description below. And you can obviously make the subtle changes. So this is kind of the edited version after I tested a bunch of matches. This one, I cut out the Basil. I just felt like he never really came up. The hero package, I think you absolutely could cut. I do not think, like if I was going to take this to a DLC, I think I would ultimately cut Hero because he's too inconsistent. But if you're just wanting to have fun, I do think he's very enjoyable to play with. And at least he's inkable, so it's not like he bricks your hand or anything. But you could find other spots for this. I did throw in Hades for a little extra spot removal. I upped both of the spot removal songs to 4. You need as many ways as possible to get stuff off the field. Again, you could throw in a couple more Hades if you don't mind going higher on your own inkables. Could probably cut him for the hero package. He fits in the same slot. And then you could go into a 4th Ink Geyser if you really want to. I've never found 4 to be necessary. Again, when it pops off, it pops off. Same, you could go into a 4th Fishbone Quill, a 4th Manor, couple little number tweaks. But overall, I've been really satisfied with this. It's been a blast. It's been a Baja blast. And I genuinely think, of course, needs a lot of testing against it, but it is seeing so many red decks almost get to B prep range, and you say, yeah, I don't think so. I'm just resetting you. And then you saw just refilling your inkwell. So it's almost not even a detriment to you. It's like, no, I will still be playing with 7, 8, and 9 ink. You're not going to. Let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions for maybe some flex slots, like for the heroes, well, I would love to hear it. Let me know if you tested out Yokai, as he's another green-blue dual ink, and if you had any success with him. Like I said, for me, even though there's a lot of shift targets, he just seemed a little too weak for what we wanted to do. I appreciate you so much for watching. If you love videos like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check back every Wednesday for more Disney Lorcana content. I am happy to bring it to you. I hope you have great polls with your set releases for Arcasia's Island. And until next time, take care.